Gormagat, Cahirlock, and thank you to those who raised issues. Senator Arda, you raised two issues. Firstly, the sporting facilities grants that have gone out over the last number of days and the green spaces and lack thereof in the area that you represent. I can't speak to individual grants that were applied for or indeed granted, but it might be an issue to raise with the Minister directly in a commencement debate. I would agree with you with regard to sinking funds in management companies. I think that that's definitely a lacuna in the law, and you know, depending on how well an apartment block is managed, they may or may not have a sinking fund, and we all know the importance of a sinking fund. So I think that that is good law that you suggest. Senator Mullen, I wasn't actually here yesterday for the order of business, but I suppose we've had our differences ourselves, and I think we managed to, despite actually a large amount of difficult stuff being thrown my direction on a daily basis some time ago, I think I'm personally managed to remain civil and cordial, and to be fair, for the most part, I think you did yourself. So, you know, I can only speak for myself in that regard, and you know, I think it is important that we keep the personal out of it and stick to the issues. I think I really regret, even with commentators, when they get personal about people in politics, because we're here to do a job. We should be professional about how we conduct our business, and it isn't really personal at the end of the day, even though it feels it a lot of the time. Everybody has to respect other people's differing views, and I regret that you felt the way you did yesterday, and I think on that...
It's the example we set for others, really.
Yeah, and I'm getting to that, and I think that the more that type of language is used and becomes the norm, you know, I think that denigrates politics, and I think that's regretful. But I can't comment on what actually happened, but I have seen obviously similar happen on previous occasions. But on that particular issue, I think people, including yourself, become quite passionate, and so that may be an explanation for anything that may have gone on.
No, it's not. There was no passion. There was
an explanation, not an excuse.
Yeah.
And for both remember that.
And also, this is not a conversation.
Yeah. As far as I understand also, sorry for interrupting you, Deputy Leader and Senator, I understand there's an investigation to this particular issue, which probably is appropriate, so maybe too much comment at this stage.
I shouldn't comment in any case, because I wasn't here, so
well,
I
you were
was just
responding,
trying to keep it to my own experiences of similar issues. With regard to mental health services, I heard a lot of that interview this morning and the European shortages that exist, and as a daughter of a consultant psychiatrist who's still working in her 70s, and there's a real need for her services in the west of Ireland, you know, I would say that a lot of your points are well made with regard to mental health being the poor relation in the health services. So I think it does warrant a good debate in this House, for sure, in early course, with the junior minister, but also with the senior minister at some point, or very soon, I would say, we should have that debate, especially in advance of the budget, because clearly there is a budgeting issue there. Senator Gavin, you raised the Trump visit, and as you say, he is the leader of the US. He was democratically elected. I'm no fan of his, I can assure you, but I think you know, the Taoiseach will have bilateral discussions with him, and we'll take the positive from the visit, that clearly it can be positive from that perspective. But I do hear you, and his type of, it goes back to the point that I made when responding to Senator Mullen's point, his language and the use of hateful you know, dialogue, and a lot of his policies, I think they are normalising that type of discussion throughout the world from leaders, which I think is regrettable. And people who want to follow in his footsteps, I don't even want to mention his name, but a guy who went for the presidency and who's going for the European elections, feeling that, oh, if they kind of go down that road, it'll be very populist and people will buy into it. So, you know, I dislike him probably as much as you do, but I think we have to take his visit for what it is. And I do think a debate on aviation in the context of regional airports would be a good one, where perhaps you could raise that issue without it having to be a discussion about Shannon Airport and what happens as regards stopovers. But I think that would be a good debate to have in the House in the near future. Senator Hopkins raised the issue of rehab care services, and I think it is a really good result, and we have to commend the ministers for sitting down with those involved and for finding a solution in a fairly short period of time, so that rehab services can continue for people throughout the country, and I think that's hugely to be welcomed. Senator Quahwell, with regard to your, you read out a very emotional email, and I can see how much this issue means to you. You're very passionate about it, and I've heard you raise it on numerous occasions. I think that we could do better by them. I don't know as much about the issue as you do, but it's certainly something that I will discuss with the Taoiseach. They're clearly heroes, and we're anything but cowards. They were courageous men, and it's a small gesture really in the context of what they've endured from what you say. So I would support you in that, and I promise I'll actually speak to the Taoiseach personally about that. Senator MacDougall raised the issue related somewhat to what we've discussed already on psychiatric problems in prisoners, and I suppose there is a distinction to be made from prisons that are mainstream prisons where prisoners go in there and have psychiatric issues, and the national mental the central mental, in that prisoners go in there found guilty as a result of their mental illness. So there is a distinction to be made, and that's probably an interesting discussion to have. I don't know as much as you do about Thornton Hall, but as read, I think that would be something to have a discussion with the Minister for Justice about. At the moment, the Minister for Justice is spending a lot of time in this House talking about one particular issue, as you know, and I'm sure he'd welcome the opportunity to come in here and speak about something that isn't the Judicial Appointments Bill. So that's certainly something to prioritise. So that is a short order of business, but it is concluded.
Very good. Is the order of business agreed?
Agreed.
Yeah.